When your work has an impact on someone else's career or life, it can make it hard to sleep at night,
I love seeing how much you truly, truly
Yeah.
care.
If you're coming for one day and are going to be doing your trade for money, that is work in the eyes of immigration. If this person is truly extraordinary, the industry will talk
Right,
about
or
it.
like, dude,
Yeah.
look at this guy's work. If he has to do
Household
all
name,
this shit,
right?
that's crazy.
The industry is shifting, and you do have to do those extra things. It's so fucking cool. Like, had you told me 10 years ago that I'd be doing this, I would have wouldn't have even believed it.
Hey everyone, we're on with Katia Teirstein. She's the lead attorney, or the only attorney, I guess, for now at Tattoo Visa. Got hundreds of clients, got thousands of visas approved for tattoo artists coming to the United States. So we're really excited to talk with her.
I want to take a second to talk about Allegory ink. I've been using Allegory black ink for some time now, and it's been the best black ink I've ever used. It's really consistent, really black, and I haven't used anything else since. They also have Ultra Black if you need that extra punch. Use the code EDEN20 for 20% off your order. Awesome. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank
Talk
you.
about what you do for the tattoo community.
Sure.
Yeah.
My name's Katia Teirstein. I own Tattoo Visa, which is a full-service immigration law firm in New York City. And for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been doing exclusively business immigration visas for the tattoo community.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like really, unless you're in the tattoo industry and you've dealt with the visa stuff, you don't know anything about it. So can you talk about kind of what the requirements are for tattoo artists coming to the United States? Like, what kind of visa are they getting? What does it entail? I know it's a lot of info, but yeah, if you could give us like a crash course, I think that'd be great.
Sure. From an artist perspective, simply put, you have to meet at least 3 criteria out of a 6 criteria test, if you will. Ideally, you want to argue, all 6. Not every artist will have that, though. So that includes things like press or prizes, brand sponsorships, pro team, other collaborations or events. We have a lot of artists who've worked with, Sullen or Vans or lifestyle brands. All of that goes kind of displaced into the different criteria. So, we might argue press as like significant recognition, but also in the press category. A prize is certainly significant recognition, but also has its own criteria. So you just sort of know the achievements of the tattoo industry and sort of place it in those buckets.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I guess like from the government standpoint, right? They don't really want a bunch of people coming in and like taking jobs that Americans would otherwise have. So like the visa is for artists of extraordinary talent. That's like the word for it, right? So basically you're trying to prove that the artists coming here are going to benefit, our workforce, our country, everything like that, because they're of exceptional talent background.
That's exactly it. And I think most work visas have that sort of spirit behind it. They want to insulate really good paying jobs here. They want to protect U.S. workers. And the O1 visa is, no exception. So it's a visa of extraordinary ability. And, there is a sort of implication that you'll be coming here and bolstering the economy, providing services that only you uniquely can provide. Artists are unique. There's no one else that could really fill that role. And so the O1 visa is really, it's for any type of artistic industry in the O1B context. So film, music, fashion, all types of art. So it really has that spirit behind it that no one else could do that job.
So, I mean, where Deanna says it all the time, we're in like this renaissance of tattooing right now where you've got all these amazing artists coming out. So it seemed, and we had Stefano on the podcast too, and he feels like he was like one of the first tattoo artists to get like an O1 visa to come to the US. So this is all like a relatively like new thing, right?
Last,
With tattoo artists.
decade or two, sure.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I want to kind of segue that into like kind of your career and like how you got into doing this, because you mentioned you've been doing it for the past 6 or 7 years, but do you want to talk about kind of like how you got into, you've got your own like niche, I feel like, in the tattoo industry and also in the legal world, which is super fucking cool. So we'd love to hear about like how that came to be.
It was pretty organic. I started my practice in 2012, so not that many years after I finished law school. And I kind of thought it would be a segue into getting a different job. I wasn't, truly set on doing immigration.
And sorry, not to cut you
No,
off,
of
but
course.
before you open your own practice, were you like working for another law firm?
Yeah, I was filling in for a couple people on maternity leave. Sort of, I graduated 2010, which was like the worst time to graduate law school. Middle of an economic crisis. It was
Yeah.
hard to get jobs. It was a tough go, especially in New York, where there's a lot of law schools. So I was sort of doing these like still in immigration, but filling in for people at different business immigration firms. And at that time, I speak French, so I was doing mostly French-speaking businesses or French-owned businesses doing their visas. So,
So you're still doing visas
right
back then.
Right, correct. I was doing asylum before that too, mostly FGM cases for women from West Africa, but I was in the immigration world still. So
Was it the talent visa or was it just
it started with all types of visas.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of like H-1B visas, which is a specialty occupation visa for software engineers and things like that. So about a year or two into it, my business started picking up, and I started doing a lot more O1s, but like I said, all types of artists, a lot in fashion, a lot in film, music. So I was working sort of in that space, and that's how I met Paul Booth. I'm not sure if he reached out to me first or if we met at an event, but he was bringing over some artists from Venezuela and asked me to do their O1s, and that was sort of the start. My first O1 for a tattoo artist was Yomico Moreno, which is like obviously
What a start.
I know,
Yeah.
right? You start right at the top.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, and at that time, obviously I liked tattoos, and I wouldn't say I was a collector at that time, but I certainly didn't know the industry like I do now. So he wasn't a household name yet, to me at least. And
Yomico wasn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I did like 3 or 4 of them with Lost Rights. And it happened quickly and sort of without any effort. They told someone who told someone, and all of a sudden I was doing, Jose Contreras at Dark Age, and it happened really organically that way.
Yeah, and it was like Yomico, Jose, Darwin Enriquez, like some like really fucking like big names in the tattoo industry now. Were they like that big when you were doing their visas too, or was that kind of like before all this happened?
I mean, it was hard to say. I certainly didn't know who they were at
Sure,
that time, but
sure.
that's like not remarkable. But they qualified easily for the O1 and eventually easily for green cards. So, I think that they were still up and coming at that time in the U.S., certainly. They had
Yeah.
never, worked here before.
Yeah, so you kind of did these big names, and then it was just kind of word of mouth, just starting to do more tattoo artist O1s.
Exactly that. So it probably took a few years until my paralegal and I, Jasmine, we were like, this seems to be a thing. Like, this is picking up. At that time, it was probably half of our business at least. So that's kind of how Tattoo Visa formed. We formed a DBA. We got the Instagram name. And, now today it's 99% of our practice.
Was the Instagram name available?
It was.
Nice. Yeah, so that's really cool. So I'm wondering if you were doing the O1 visa for other kinds of artists and musicians and stuff like that, how much of that translated into like tattoo artists, and then how much of it was like learning the tattoo industry, learning what kinds of things were even possible out there to meet criteria and stuff like that, because I'm sure it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a good question. I did an O1 visa probably a year or two before for a comic book illustrator. And I remember being like, fuck, I don't know anything about comics. I
that
still
was probably
mix up DC and
novel.
Marvel.
Yeah.
It was like tragic. But you have to sort of dive into an industry to be able to adequately petition for the O1. So, yes, any attorney can do that. And you can know sort of the legal regulations about the O1, but knowing an industry really well only helps you do that better. What are
Totally.
the achievements? What can, fill those 6 buckets? And it's going to be different for a comic book illustrator than it is for a tattoo artist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think most attorneys, experienced attorneys can do that, but it's going to take time and it's going to take creativity and resources that, really comes from knowing an industry well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, and so to apply for the visa, you need to have an attorney, right?
You don't have to. you certainly should, if you're submitting to USCIS and signing a G28, that has to be signed by an attorney, of course. But I have heard of people who don't use attorneys to do this.
What are troubles they run into, though, if they don't?
So the process is twofold. Like you submit your application to USCIS, and that's a struggle to get approved as it is. 40% of those cases are denied statistically. And even if it is approved, you're then going to a U.S. consulate or an embassy to interview there. And once you are there, you can run into a whole host of different problems, right? So immigration is complex, it's nuanced, checking a wrong box.
Changing, right?
Constantly changing, depending on, the presidential administration, different regulations change and, the application of those regulations change. So unless you're really sort of in it as a career, you wouldn't pick up on those changes. And it can have disastrous consequences for clients.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's almost threefold, because before you submit all that shit, you've got to make sure you have a good application because you said 40% get accepted or denied?
Denied.
Not with you guys though, right?
No.
Right.
You have a 100% success rate.
I always hate to say that, but yes, so we've had one denial that wasn't on the merits. It was a procedural error, and we appealed it because it was immigration's mistake. That's still pending, so that's like my annoying caveat, but yes.
Yeah.
And how many have you done?
1,000?
Thousands with 100% success rate. I won't say that too much because no jinxing, right?
Yeah.
I know.
With what?
But even then, the odds are good.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
The amount of people you're helping.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's
So,
such a cool like niche thing like to find. Like it's not like a known title to like specialize in the legal side of immigration for tattoo artists. There's not a lot of people that can qualify to do that.
No.
Because it helps to be a lawyer. It helps to know the industry. And I think very rarely do those two go together.
yeah, like I said, you kind of like have carved out your own niche, like in both
Yeah.
industries, right? In law and tattoo. And that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I certainly have other colleagues that have firms that focus on an industry, but it's mostly going to be like film, where you would think that the volume of clients are just there, right?
Yeah.
So when I tell people what I do, most people are like, how do you have enough work, enough business? I'm like, fuck, let me tell you, there's a lot of artists out there, a lot of amazing artists. And I think it's part of tattoo art being recognized as fine art. That's even 10 years ago when I started, I felt like there was a stigma. There were hoops to jump through for that, especially at the interview stage. But we still see it today, and I meet plenty of lawyers who just are baffled by that.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely. So you said you need an attorney to sign the G28?
Yeah, so a G28 is an entry of appearance as an attorney. That's what the form name is. It goes in with every I-129 application. There are certain associations that can sign that, or immigration service providers, but those are registered with the government. So you need to be an attorney to sign that.
So if somebody's not working with you, who do they have sign it?
I mean,
Can you have any attorney sign it?
Yeah, you could choose to submit an I-129. That's like the O1's base petition form. You could choose to submit that without a G28, without a lawyer. That would be crazy to invest that kind of time without using a lawyer. But I suppose that you could. We do have people who come to us who've submitted applications pro se without an attorney, been denied, are looking for advice on moving forward. And that adds an extra challenge for us. If you're up against a denial, we need to make sure that we really meet the criteria strongly, have new types of evidence to submit. But, we certainly have, maybe 5 to 10% of clients come to us after they've been denied before, and we're able to overcome that denial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just you mentioned 2 forms, and my head's already spinning. Right. So for somebody
alphabet soup, all the immigration.
So for you to find out what you need to do to fill out all those forms, it sounds like it's, even if it costs money, it's probably just easier to get a lawyer. And I'm assuming that you kind of walk everybody through the whole process. It's not all right, we're here if you need you. It's let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah. I mean, what we say is that everything that requires a signature is drafted by us. And that includes recommendation letters, the petition itself. There's something called a support letter, which is in short, like the legal argument about why an artist qualifies. All of that is written by us. It's really, the artist is most often just providing proof that the achievement occurred.
Yeah.
So like proof of a trophy or a prize or a press article link. Everything else that goes into the petition is done by us. So every research about why that achievement is impressive or important, what's the percentage of other artists who have won that, or what's the percentage of other artists who are sponsored by brands? You have to really spell that out for immigration. Even, the most obvious of achievements, you have to explain why it's impressive.
Yeah.
And
Which
document it.
Yeah. Which so we had a conversation a little bit ago. I think you had an artist that was working on a green card, and we were talking about winning a best of show and the merits behind that and how we can prove, because everybody in the tattoo industry knows that if you win best of show at Empire State, you're the fucking shit. Like
Right.
That's like one of the top prizes. But people outside the tattoo industry, they don't know what Empire State is. They probably don't even know that there are competitions at these shows, and they don't know what best of show means. And, the tattoo industry, being that it's growing a lot right now, there's not really any like research there or like that many like documents that would show like what any of this shit means. Like there's no document that says like what it means to be on a pro team. So from your side, it sounds like a lot of like just doing all this work to just grab whatever you can to show somebody that knows nothing about it, hey, this is significant. Hey, this person is deserving of a job here.
Yeah, and I think that also comes from knowing the industry really well. So, best of show is obviously, so in the regulations it says, have you won an important international award that's the equivalent of an Academy Award or an Oscar in your field? And for me, that is a best of show at Empire State, right? What is more impressive than that? So, we've developed, we call it the database, but it's for every single convention, every single award. What are other artists who have won that award? What are some press articles that mention how prestigious this is? That's something we've, over the years, developed a pretty strong database of documents for any time an artist comes to us and says, I've won X award at X convention. We just plug and play on what are those documents that we've already gathered for why something's impressive.
Wow. So you have a database like that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. That is incredible.
It's very rare at this point that somebody comes to us that has a convention we haven't already researched, a publication we haven't already researched. I know the media kits and circulation data, even, things like salary requirements. We have a database of every country that says what a tattoo artist typically earns in that country. How do you prove that that session rate or that hourly rate is higher than the typical tattoo artist in that country? Yeah.
That
comes with time. It comes with time. So, we do this, we submit dozen or more of these a month. It comes with time.
What would be now, because I know you've done like thousands and all of them have been successful. And I know not everybody has been able to like gain a best of show at an Empire or Golden. What would be the minimum requirements?
It's a great question.
Yeah. That could allow someone to come here.
Yeah, and we have artists that don't for whatever reason do the conventions. They might not like that, might not be part of their career path, or they might have a style that doesn't win best of show or best of day. So, for those artists, and we do a lot of those, fine line artists, ornamental, those types of styles. And what I say is that you're not going to get anywhere without press. So in my opinion, if you don't have that, that's the best place to start. So at Tattoo Visa, we have clients that sign with us before being documentarily qualified. And we would always work with them, like coach them, if you will, introduce them to people, get those achievements before we're even going to consider submitting this. And there have been times, where we've had to sit down with an artist and say, I just don't feel 100% confident on this. And I would rather hold on to a file until you get something. And that's really going to be a judgment call I see at the end of the process, unfortunately. So when I'm looking at a file completed, it's all assembled, I'm like, oh, fuck, I just don't, I can't say that that 100% feel this is going to get approved. And if the artist is willing, I'll hold on to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get yourself into the press if like that's really important? And is there a way to do that?
So we have a database of press that we work with, and it's really just making those introductions. I can't, Yeah, I can't get a brand sponsorship, for example. I always tell our artists, well, start with the brands you use. What ink do you use? What machines do you use? Reach out there first. Like, make sure this is a true, legitimate relationship for you. And then with the press, too, it's, yes, you can purchase press. You can also hire a PR agent. You can get yourself out there. These are all things that are, like, genuinely good for your career.
Yeah.
Like, you should be, you know,
Yeah.
not that you have to do this anyways. There's certainly artists who just have their head down and do the work. But, you know, these are all things that you know, especially if you're interested in coming to the U.S., you should be doing.
Okay, so if minimum requirements, press,
I would not
sponsorships,
submit an O1 without press. Yeah.
press sponsorships,
So
awards of any kind, just going to a convention and
Yeah,
and
although we've
applying.
certainly, like I said, done
Yeah.
it for artists who don't have those.
Okay.
But of the 6, you kind of feel like press is like the most important one.
I just feel immigration is going to think, you know, if this person is truly extraordinary, the industry will talk about it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Now, here's something interesting too, is I've heard you say, and I've seen in your papers, that social media doesn't really count as press.
No.
Even if somebody's got 1 million followers, they're blowing up. I
It's a
think lot of-
common misconception we get. So artists will, you know, in our intake process, I'll ask them what press they have. You know, 90% of them, and you know, of course they wouldn't know this, submit social media as press. And immigration's perspective on this is, if it's not subject to some sort of editorial review, the accuracy and the veracity of the contents really can't be verified. So for them, it's going to be more traditional press. And that doesn't mean it can't be like digitally, you know, online publications and stuff like that, but it shouldn't be blogs. It shouldn't be, you know, reposting and resharing.
Like something that has an editor.
Sorry?
Like something that has like an editor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
I guess because also maybe people can buy followers and things like that.
We've heard that too in
Yeah.
immigration responses. Like,
Yeah.
since you can buy followers, you know, someone's mom can repost things. And we've been able to massage that a little bit. Like, for example, we use Instagram a lot and evidence from Instagram, but it's going to be more in sense of like prizes or trophies from
Sure.
conventions. And we argue successfully that if the convention itself is posting, that's, you know, that's extra evidence of the veracity of
Yeah.
it. And, you know, they're not going to be posting just like random shit. It's going to
Yeah.
be, you know, congratulations, Deanna, on winning, you know, blah, blah, blah.
now, do you think, just with the way that social media is growing, do you think that that's something that might ever turn into part of the conversation when?
I mean, if it does, I would not expect that to happen swiftly at immigration.
Yeah.
Policy changes there are
Sure.
fucking slow.
Yeah.
You know, and these regulations were written before the internet. So it's
Wow.
like you're really working with some archaic, you know, staples. So I don't see that happening anytime soon, for better or worse.
Yeah. So now, when you talk about showing that somebody has an extraordinary talent, is there like a percentile that you're trying to show they're in, as far as like how they stack up against other tattoo artists?
In the O1 context, no, but certainly in the green card. It's not in the regulations, but it's in a lot of opinions that you should be in the top 10 to 15% of your industry to qualify for the EB1 green card. I would argue that even all of our O1s are in that bucket.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and it's wild to me because, and so I know Jose, and I remember hearing about his green card struggles and stuff like that, and just all the stuff that he was having to do to show that he's like one of the best. And for us, it's like a no-brainer. Like, dude,
Yeah.
look at this guy's work. If he has to do all
Household
this
name,
shit,
right?
that's crazy. And I think as tattoo artists that are, you know, all the tattoo artists that we work with, the tattoo artists going to conventions, I think sometimes we forget like how many tattoo artists are out there. I mean, like there's 5 tattoo shops like on this road right
yeah,
here.
I think
And-
there's 130,000 registered, like with the IRS data in the United States alone.
Yeah, I feel like
Wow.
there's got to be.
It's got to be more than that too.
Well, yeah.
yeah, the ones that pay their taxes.
Right. I'm sure there's a lot
Yeah.
that aren't paying their taxes. So, yeah, that's crazy. I feel like anybody that submits to you guys is like, I'd be shocked if they weren't in the top 10% when you consider all tattoo artists as a whole. So
Totally.
I get it, but at the same time, it's like, damn, like you really have to do a lot of work to show that, you know?
I think the hard thing too is that you can be the best artist out there and, be recognized in social media and like inner circles. But if you're not jumping through those very specific hoops, then you're not going to qualify for the O1. And I think that that's what people struggle with is, yes, I'm busy, I'm booked out, I have a high session rate. But if you're not doing the conventions, you're not getting brand sponsorships, you're not working, and you're not showing that over a trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Immigration could look at your application and say, sure, you were extraordinary 5 years ago. What's happened since then? So there is this expectation that you build on that too. And if you're just like head down tattooing, you wouldn't qualify for that, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's wild. Yeah. I mean, I almost kind of have the same view, not just in the sense of immigration, but just tattooing in general. I feel like you gotta not necessarily do those specific things, but like, I feel like if you're just putting your head down and working, not focusing on the peripherals like social media, not necessarily sponsorships or stuff like that, but if you're just doing that, eventually you're going to fall behind.
Well, I've heard you guys talk a lot about it here, but the industry is shifting and you do have to do those extra things. You can't just like do your job anymore. And Tattoo Visa is shifting with it. We are doing a lot more stuff this year than just, head down, putting the petitions in. We're having to do a lot more of those things. And it's right. I think most industries are shifting that way. And you have to be flexible and adapting to those changes and becoming content creators and doing those things. But certainly if you want to expand your career in the US, it's mandatory now.
Yeah.
What if I did do it like this? In my upcoming seminar, I will be approaching my teaching process differently than I have in the past. One of my favorite aspects in my work is being able to use and distinguish different textures to create contrast in the tattoo. One of the best tools you can learn to improve the quality of your tattoo is to master machine and needle to know how to create different textures and when to use them. During the 2 days of my seminar, I will be working very closely with you to help you understand and master your tools better in order to achieve a more realistic look to your tattoos. On the first day, I will be doing a live tattoo, but this time on fake skin so that I'm able to take my time on each element of the design. The second day, I will help you recreate the same techniques and the same textures on your fake skin. The seminar is going to be August 25th and 26th here at Eden in Dallas. Visit EdenBodyArtStudios.com/edu to purchase your ticket and see you here. This is so fucking hard. This is way harder than tattooing, dude. Holy shit.
Well, do you want to talk about some of the things that you've been starting to implement and do?
Yeah. So, like I said, we've been around for like 10 plus years, and I sort of prided myself that I didn't have to do any marketing before. I would say that a lot. Like, I've never paid for an ad. I've never, paid for a publication. We were always just referrals, return clients, and that's great, and I didn't necessarily feel like this year Tattoo Visa needed to grow. I mean, we've been exploding just sort of on its own. But I wanted our online reputation to match what I felt we deserved and what people were saying. So this year especially, we hired help with our social media. We are doing a lot more conventions. We are just putting ourselves out there and what we do. I was in Philadelphia this year and just doing the rounds and like talking to people, and a studio came up to me and they said, "Oh yeah, I mean, we've heard of Tattoo Visa. I just didn't know you were real people." And I sort of like was, well, fuck, what does that mean? And then I'm like, of course that's what it means. No one's seen my face. No one knows my name. Of course that's what it would mean. So that was a real big eye opener for me. And it's like, we have to do more. We have to put this out there. Again, not sort of with the interest of growing it, but just making sure our reputation online reflected who we actually were.
Yeah, totally.
Because there's also now people trying to do what you guys do, but maybe not doing it in the best way. And I think it's important for people to know why you guys are legitimate and are really helpful and needed.
Yeah. There's going to be competitors in every market. Like, I'm not, sort of naive enough to say that we were the only people that will ever do this.
Yeah.
It is a lucrative field. I mean, my biggest sort of takeaway from all of that is I want to be collaborative. I want other people to get valuable information from us. And that includes other attorneys too. But, if you are going to be paying for this service, you should go to the people who the work is being copied off of, and I really hope that people speak with experienced counsel. That's my biggest issue, is you should speak with an attorney. It's not just about getting an artist visa and an O1, but there's plenty of other pitfalls in this process and inadmissibility, or perhaps even other immigration avenues for people. Experienced immigration counsel can help you with that, regardless of if it's us or not.
Yeah.
And how important it is that the people that people work with are actual lawyers.
I mean, huge. It's, it's like I said, checking the wrong box, which is not a simple yes or no. These are like complicated questions in some cases.
Yeah.
So you have to, you have to have like a legal degree just to read these. And the implications of checking the wrong one can be huge, right? So especially people I'm sure you guys have heard in the tattoo industry, people being refused entry, God forbid bans and things like that. There's legal implications for all of those types of actions.
Yeah.
And you have to be, I would say even a general practice attorney responding to those types of things would be malpractice. You need to be specialized in immigration to navigate how to successfully move that person to a green card or a visa.
Yeah. And I want to circle back to something that you said about putting information out there, because you do put a lot of information out there, and that's not just a new thing this year. So now you're doing it on social media, but long before that you had the guide for artists, and you just published a new one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we wrote the guidebook a couple of years ago, and I do realize that not everybody reads it, right? It's like 50 pages. We put a lot of information, a lot of work and time went in there.
But it's also very palatable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pictures. It's not
it's beautiful to look
hard
at.
read,
Right.
Yeah.
No. We have a lot of artists like submit photographs of their work, so it's visually impressive. But it was a lot of work to put those out there. And I did want, it was with a spirit of having people have the most information as possible. So we just published a new one for studios. And that's something I'd noticed over the years. So at Tattoo Visa, we only represent artists. I don't represent studios specifically. And there's a lot of reasons for that, mostly ethical concerns, conflict of interest, that type of stuff. So it's just easier for us to only represent artists. But I found a lot of studios were apprehensive or, overwhelmed by just starting the process. So I wanted to make sure there was information out there specifically for you guys to know, well, what documents am I going to have to submit? What are the risks for doing this? What does it mean to be a petitioner or a sponsor?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of like misinformation or sort of, fear about doing that. So I wanted to make sure studios felt comfortable, were willing to do all this at the start.
Yeah.
How do you get that book?
It's on our website, tattoovisa.com. Yeah, guides. We publish all of them there.
You just
That's
put it out there
info.
for free. Anybody can just go grab it.
Absolutely.
And I think
Incredible.
that's fantastic. But you mentioned that some people might be biting off on it a little bit, doing some copy pasting. How does that make you feel when you see that stuff?
I'm conflicted. So I know we were talking about this last night, but when Ryan Ashley was here and she had that great quote about collaboration and competition, was it like the people at the bottom compete, the people at the top collaborate?
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, oh yes, that's good. That's good stuff. I can identify with that.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're doing with these guides. I want to make sure everyone can read it. Everyone gets that information. But it is based on years of work on my part, but also my team's. And so I don't want to gatekeep, but it feels, it's tough, right?
It's like, I worked so hard for this.
And I want to sort of protect that work. But also it's, I do put it out there for everyone to see.
Yeah.
I have lots of attorneys who call me, who want, like a phone call. Maybe they got a tricky RFE for that one.
Quick conversation.
Yeah, quick
Hey, I have a quick question.
conversation. Yeah, or like, can you help me with this RFE I got for a tattoo artist? Don't worry, I'm not a competitor. I just got one, And for many years, I would have those calls and I welcomed it. And I remember when I was starting out, I definitely relied on mentors. I've always sort of done those. But lately, when I see them copy paste the guide on their website or, copy paste our website on theirs, I'm like, oh, fuck. That stings, right?
Yeah.
And I like that we're having this conversation because it's very similar with tattoo artists too. And
Totally.
there's a some kind of line there between like being inspired by and like copying somebody, right?
Yeah.
But neither feel great. And it's funny that we had this conversation last night. Like just this morning, I was like looking at you could call it a competitor's, but somebody else's website that like just little things about it, like they didn't necessarily copy paste, but like their intake form was like the same as something that I wrote, and that's not something that I like spent years doing, but still I'm like, damn, like you're
work
really
hard
just gonna
still.
like take it, and it's like it's and I feel when I get upset about that stuff, I feel hypocritical because I've been on record on this podcast. I say all the time, yeah, you should collaborate at the top. But at the same time, it doesn't feel great when somebody just takes your
That's
stuff.
not collaborating though. That's
Yeah.
stealing someone else's work.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Like I teach a lot about my style and I expect people to take my technique and use it for their own. But it's different when someone takes maybe like elements of a design that I've spent hours trying to think up of and then do it. There's that line from I think stealing and collaborating.
Yeah. And I think you were asking last night, like, how do you feel when that happens to you? And like,
Stings, right?
doesn't feel great. Yeah.
And it's certainly a fine line, like intellectual property is not at all my specialty. And I see the rationale behind all of that. And I think as practitioners, I could slap a cease and desist on someone. And there's lots of reasons why I would never do that or wouldn't up until now. But, it's something I'm conscious of now, especially. The more we put out there and the more you're on social media, the more you're putting yourself on the internet, you expose yourself to that stuff.
Totally.
And it's vulnerable and it creates a lot more of these complicated situations, especially when you practice in one industry. So it's all the same people. It's all the same, it's the same drama out there. And we try to be super neutral and just put our heads down and do the best that we can. And that's what I really hope at the end of this is, yes, there are going to be other competitors. And I know that. I know that's true of every industry. There's going to be people who steal your work and do it, with some mediocrity. But, you have to hope that just putting yourself out there, being positive, sharing information, most people are going to see, well, that's the best.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, most people are going to see that it's the best.
The right people will see that it's the best.
And then like, it's still a net positive because you're still helping people. Like, even if they use another lawyer, that kind of sucks for you, but indirectly through you, that's going to help some other lawyer, help somebody else get their visa,
Yeah. And really that's what we want at the end of the day too. I want to expand the artist community in the United States. I want to change people's perspective on immigration. Immigration policy is obviously very important to me. And that's really the spirit behind everything that we do. It has to be that. You have to have that sort of guiding light. And I think the second you sort of see artists as a commodity or like even just like a way to earn a living, like that's when you lose that guiding principle is when you can run afoul of all that. And so as long as we stay hyper-focused on that goal, I know that there's going to be positive outcomes for everything.
Yeah, totally. So actually that's something that I was curious about and I'd like to ask about because you kind of brought it up. I feel like a lot of times there's a stigma against non-tattoo artists making money off the industry, right? Getting into the industry, it doesn't matter how helpful they're being, right? I think a lot of artists are like, well, I don't want to work with this person because they're not a tattoo artist, or I don't fuck with this person because they're not a tattoo artist. So I'm wondering if you've had any of that, had to deal with any of those struggles or had any of that pushback.
If so, it wasn't to my face and I wasn't told about that. So,
very rarely does it happen to your face.
True. Two people on my staff are married to artists. So, respecting the sort of processes for artists has always been very important to us. A lot of the app was built for wanting to make this as easily done as possible for people who are busy, people who are creatives. So we do take a lot of time in knowing what it's like to work with artists. But yeah, I agree that, for better or worse, I even see shop owners that sort of take advantage of artists and milking artists. And it's something that we're aware of for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Well, you guys help so much and are helping making this industry better and multiple shops better to have like these high caliber artists and changing lives. So I'd be surprised if any of that was happening to you.
So are you a master at using a 3-round liner? Or do small needle groupings and details scare the shit out of you? Either way, we've got a great seminar for you. We'll be having Dmitry Troshin for a hands-on seminar here at Eden, October 13th and 14th. Dmitry pioneered the 3-round liner only movement, and he's a very frequent mentor and teacher. This seminar is going to be 2 full days. First day, he'll explain how he does his tattoo design and stencil process. He'll go over some principles of academic drawing that can directly apply to your tattoo techniques. He'll also go over how he takes great pictures and edits them quickly. Finally, you'll warm up for day 2 by doing some practice exercises on fake skin. The second day, Dmitry will critique some of your tattoos and discuss how you can improve them moving forward. You'll then watch Dmitry tattoo on fake skin while you tattoo the same design. He'll walk around to each of you and help guide you through the process step by step. At the end of the day, you'll also get some homework so you can continue practicing and working on your skills. Now, Bishop Rotary is also going to be providing the same materials Dmitry uses every single day. So you'll get the chance to practice with the exact same equipment Dmitry uses. At the end of the seminar, you'll also have the opportunity to purchase the machine and needles at a discount. Whether you're looking to perfect your 3-round liner technique or just looking for another skill set to add to your tool belt with a fresh approach, this seminar is for you. It's going to be an incredible investment to your tattoo career. Now, we do limit the spots in these seminars so each person has as much one-on-one time with Dmitry as possible. Spots are first come, first serve, so don't wait. Again, it's going to be Sunday and Monday, October 13th and 14th here at Eden in Dallas. Visit EdenBodyArtStudios.com/edu to get all the information and book your ticket. Solid. So you mentioned your app. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Because that's something pretty recently that you've rolled out, right?
Yeah, in the last few years, for sure. So we had a huge influx of clients about 4 years ago. Can't really explain what happened, but all of a sudden we had over 100 at a time. And I remember when we hit that 100 artists, was huge. We're like, fuck, how did this happen? Our team was a lot smaller then too. And so I had been speaking with this developer for a few years, and at the time their product just didn't make sense for us. And we were old school then. I'm talking Word document questionnaires, sending people Dropbox folders. It's like I shudder to think about that now, if we were still doing that. But you're exchanging emails with people, but also Instagram DMs and phone calls. It was chaos. So it was actually Amala on our team had another follow-up meeting with this developer, and she was like, we just can't afford not to do this. And they had a new product that they were using to white label with businesses. And at the time, it was super new. We were one of maybe 15 businesses that were at the ground of sort of developing this new product, which was kind of neat because we got to influence a software or an app being built, which I think would be hard. It makes it a lot less expensive to do it that way too. So we took out an SBA loan and built it. And it's really sort of addressed a lot of the challenges we were facing then, particularly communication. So like I said, we get hundreds of emails a day, tons of DMs, phone calls. Shit was getting lost. It's just hard to stay on top of that communication. So the app features a WhatsApp style messaging feature that's really neat. Makes it so you're able to speak with us almost 24 hours a day. One of us is almost always online, and I could easily, getting coffee, can answer a few questions and stuff. So the communication is rapid there. It also has a really simple pipeline process. So start to finish, what are all the tasks, all the documents, everything that needs to be done, literally from intake to interviewing at the embassy and uploading your visa stamp at the end. Every single task, both on the side of the artist as well as us.
Yeah.
So it's 100 different tasks that need to be done.
Yeah.
And so it's a really easy timeline. Artists can see where they're at, where they're going, what needs to be done, what they're waiting on, what's next.
Yeah.
Eliminated a lot of that, sort of guesswork.
Yeah, and so that's an investment not just for you, but for the artists as well, especially when, it's expensive to have a lawyer to go through the visa process. Just the filing fees are super expensive. So, and it's a big deal. So they can be thinking what is going on here? And that's great that you can lay it out and be like, here's exactly where we're at in the process. And also that they have that communication with you, because you guys have a lot of clients.
Yeah.
How many active clients do you have right now?
As of this morning, 304.
And how many of you
That's
are there?
insane.
There are 6 women on my team.
All women. That's so cool.
I love that. Yeah.
Badasses.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, obviously that number fluctuates, and that's at every part of the process. So that includes even, our artists who are awaiting interview or, literally haven't done like the very last steps. So we probably submit like 12 to 15 cases each month. And those, and you're constantly filling them in, people signing. Just even our Get Started on our website, which is where people would go if they wanted to have a case evaluated, see if they're eligible for this. It's a form on our website, and we probably get 10 of those a day.
Yeah. And so right when they sign, so even if they don't have the criteria, right when they sign up, you kind of vet them and let them know, hey, this is what you would probably need to do
Exactly.
to get this.
So based on their questionnaire, I usually send like via email saying, oh, well, you don't have this and you don't have this. I would recommend doing this. I share a lot of those press contacts immediately in that response. So, again, it's going to be sort of looking at their experience and their achievements and saying, I don't think we're there to be able to even sign with you. Like, you have some more work to do before you can become a client. And I do a lot of those. I would say 90% even of those, the people who fill out the Get Started aren't qualified yet.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to have a phone call with you to talk about that. I always offer that in those emails. But then the other 10%, I send an engagement letter and say, if you want to get started or have an email with me or have any questions about my sort of analysis of your career, we could talk about that.
And so to fill out that form or get that intake or even do a phone call with you, like what's the charge for that? Like
that's free. Yeah. We have always done free consultations.
It's got to take so much time.
It does. About 4 hours of my day is doing just that part of my job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot.
It's a lot of talking. Yeah. But, and again, going back to the app has really streamlined our process. So this volume, like 3 years ago, would not have been possible with the people we have now. And it's really, we've really fine-tuned our roles, and the app just pushes cases along. It's really magical.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So, you've got 300 active clients at a time. You've got 6 people. And you mentioned that, the push on Instagram isn't necessarily to grow. That being said, it probably is going to bring more clients to you. So do you want to grow anymore? Would that even be possible at this point? Or like where do you see moving forward from this? Or are you just going to keep doing the same work you've been doing and just do it really well?
Yeah, it's so weird. Maybe different from you guys, I didn't have that sort of entrepreneurial vision for Tattoo Visa when it started. It just sort of did. So I haven't really thought about like my 5-year plan, my 10-year plan. I think growth is going to be inevitable for us considering what we do and like our place in the industry already. So I do think we will have to hire more people, and I would welcome that. But yeah, I think it's something that we could do. I sort of shudder to think of having more clients than we do now, but with additional team and sort of the app as it gets more and more features, which it continues to do, I think we could get there.
Yeah. And so can you kind of let us know like what your team is like now? Because you said you have 6 people, but what does everybody do?
Yeah. So I'll try to do it in order of when they were hired. Jasmine has been with me since inception, right? Like, so she's my identical twin sister. You guys met her at Gods of Ink.
Makes it confusing when
I know,
we're meeting you at conventions.
What we say now is Jasmine has 2 sleeves. Katia has 1.
For now.
For now, right? For
It's
now.
going to be tough in a little bit.
Our nose rings are also on different sides, but you wouldn't remember that. Anyways, Jasmine.
Like, hey, how's it going?
Right. Yeah. So identical twin. She has worked with me since like before Tattoo Visa. I think we were even like out at dinner one time and we were like, well, fuck, that's available on Instagram. I'm sure we were together when we were like doing all this. So she's been with me forever. Next hire was Amela. She is a case manager. Jasmine's my paralegal. So Amela's been with us a good 3 or 4 years. After that was Amanda, and she is another case manager. And then we hired our older sister, Annie, who left like a lifetime career in education to join Tattoo Visa. She is a published author. She's an amazing writer. So she's our communications content writer.
Yeah.
And then our newest hire is Nikita. She just graduated law school. She's currently out for 3 months because she's studying for the bar exam.
Good luck.
Good luck, Nikita.
Yeah.
So she will be our second lawyer.
That's cool. I was going to ask because you're the only like
Yeah.
attorney of the group. I was going to ask if you had plans to bring on more, but it sounds like that's
Oh, thank God.
yeah. So like,
We're ready
so
for it.
I mean, obviously you have a lot of help, but as the attorney, like, what are your responsibilities that like only you can do, and that maybe with a new attorney hire, you're going to be able to share some of those.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, I do all sort of review of eligibility coming in. I also, am reviewing an intake for certain issues like criminal history. We do have people who come in with criminal history, previous immigration violations, that type of thing. A lawyer should always be reviewing that stuff at intake, because you never want to sort of expend this time and money and then be like, fuck, I could never even get a visa at the interview.
Right.
So I do a lot of that. Like I said, 4 hours a day is doing that, calls with people, talking about eligibility. The legal arguments are drafted by Jasmine and Nikita for the most part, as well as forms. I do a review process at the end. So that's the other thing too, is you'll have 1,000 pages, literally. These are set in like moving boxes. They're huge applications. Wow. And we do three
multiple
reviews.
languages sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, we
Everything's gotta be
submit
translated.
like certified translations for all this stuff too. So you have like a foreign language document followed by a certified English translation. That's part of the process too. And sort of the middle, we request all of those. So at the very end, every single application gets reviewed at least 2 to 3 times before it's submitted. And that's like front to back. So I do one of those. Jasmine does one of those. Yeah. So usually that's what it is. And that's the beauty of the app too. You're not sort of getting these like emails sent off on the side. I see all communication between everybody. All of us are aware of what's happening in a file and reading through it, times 300.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, it's kind of similar with like the tattoo booking process. Like if you've got things in all different places, like that makes it a lot harder. So to have where it's like all that communication right there. Obviously, it's a little bit less intensive on the tattoo booking side of things, but that's super cool. That's super beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of get into like the nitty gritty
Okay.
of like, the process of like getting an O1. And so the first thing I want to ask too, because I didn't know this until I had a call with you, and I'm pretty sure it was you, but it was like we had first opened Eden, and I was curious about international hires because we had people asking to guest spot, stuff like that. And I didn't even know like what requires a visa. Like, do guest artists have to have a visa?
Yes.
So if you're an international artist to tattoo at all in the United States, you've got to have a visa.
Yeah. If you're coming for one day and are going to be doing your trade for money, that is work in the eyes of immigration. Doesn't matter if it's a short guest spot. Doesn't matter if it's at a convention. I think this is a common misconception. This isn't the only industry that does this. Like plenty of people come over as musicians and will do like a gig and get paid for that gig. And that's unauthorized work. So I think the problem with the tattoo industry is that it's so rampant, and people come to us, and if they've been to the U.S. at all before, what's the likelihood that they've engaged in unauthorized work?
Very high.
100%. 100%. So, if it's tricky because there is not a true visa option for a 2-week guest spot. And it's really unfortunate. A lot of people ask me that, like, how can I come for just a convention? Am I going to have to go through all of this work to get an O1 visa just for that? And the answer is yes. If it is at all practicing your trade and you are getting money for that service, that is work. Requires work authorization.
What happens if you don't do that? What do you risk?
So
because you said it's rampant in the tattoo industry,
Yes.
and I feel like it happens every day all around the country. People are working here
Totally.
unauthorized, whether it's fair or not, right? But
Yeah.
it happens.
So the implications depend on what type of visa or lack thereof that you're here on. Some countries have what's called ESTA. It's a visa waiver. So that they can come here without applying for a tourist visa to come. And so they might just be refused entry and sent home. They're allowed to withdraw their admission here at the border. We still have to collect all that on intake. It still takes dealing with it. People who've been caught here on a B visa, tourist visa, for example, might be subject to a ban. And told that they can't come back for 5 years. This is all very formal. It would be before a judge. You would have a letter. You would know that you're banned. So, there's a couple of different ways you can be refused entry. You can also run into issues even at the embassy. So say your O1 visa has been approved, but there's stuff on the internet about you working. You know, everyone puts it on Instagram. The shops put it on Instagram, or God forbid it's on Reddit and you cannot get rid of it. You still run that risk of having an approved O1 by USCIS, go to the interview and have an officer who says, well, can you talk about this post I very easily just found using a simple Google search? That's going to be tricky.
So that's something that you've got to be aware of if you're going to apply is like, do you have a paper trail out there of unauthorized work? Now, when those people come to you, I mean, I know you probably don't police people's social media, but...
No, and I say that specifically in our engagement. Like, it is not my job to, you know, go through, coach your social media, dissect your social media, because God forbid I don't catch something in there that's hairy, then, yeah.
So do you, like, ever turn people down on that basis if they've worked here unauthorized before?
I have in the past, yes. Not turned down, but I did disengage someone once who refused to take our advice, and I didn't want to be associated with that anymore.
Totally. Yeah, because it sounds like that could be a
well,
pretty easy deal breaker at the interview right there.
Yeah, and it also, you know, you're submitting this petition, and immigration is going to be asking questions like, have you ever violated the laws of the United States before? And you have to answer those truthfully. And being an attorney who's representing someone in that petition, and if I have actual knowledge of you violating those, you know, and then you're saying you did not, and I'm saying I have to sort of either disengage or counsel you to submit something different. But it's hairy. And like I said, it's not the only industry that does this.
Yeah.
So I know of plenty of other practitioners who have to walk this fine line.
Yeah. So during the process, like, they will get asked, like, have you worked in the United States before? And they have to say yes.
They could. And that's at really any stage of the process. So if people are coming here to the United States, they might get asked at port of entry. So like literally by CBP when they enter. You know, like when you guys travel internationally, you know how scary it is to walk up to that window and like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe as Americans, we don't feel the risk, but I've spoken to plenty of people who are like still scared to have that conversation.
Oh, I am a rule follower. So
me too. I'm always like, fuck,
myself.
what do I say? Here for a convention?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's scary, you know, and I sort of think that CBP is investigating people before they're there. Because I've had plenty of artists who come to me and say, I don't know how they discovered this post. It was taken down. I was very careful. I didn't bring my equipment with me. You know, I posted about this guest and then took it down. I know it wasn't on the internet when I entered. And I sort of suspect that as soon as you put your passport number in when you book a ticket, someone is at a computer.
That's why.
It has to be, right? You know?
Yeah,
They're literally showing posts that are deleted.
Wow.
Dang, that's insane.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, that might make people think twice about doing that. Because I guess worst case scenario, you know, you could be banned from coming back here. But if you're trying to get a visa here,
there's no reason to risk it, really.
Yeah.
It makes our job that much harder. It makes the process a lot scarier for clients. It's just like, don't risk it until then. Like, you can totally come here and you can go to the conventions. I know that there are some people who bring their client with them. There's no exchange of money. They're here purely for the awards, and that would be permissible. So I would advise people to do that in lieu of like a guest spot or something where that's just so blatantly, you know.
Well, so I was going to ask if money's the caveat. Can you just tattoo people for free?
Yeah. So again,
but also, how do you prove that?
That's the hard thing, right? So it is a gray area. But artists, you know, if it's like a celebrity client. So I, for example, had an artist who came here and was doing something with the NBA. And it was, you know, I obviously can't say his name or whatever, but he ended up tattooing a NBA player while he was here. But he claims, and I believe him, that he did not get any money for it. So it was purely part of like his contract with like this collaboration that he was doing with the NBA. And he insists that it was purely sort of like almost like a PR thing based with this collaboration. So the problem is that, okay, so we have a contract for the collaboration. He was only here like a weekend. How do I prove that he didn't make money? Because there's tons of press about him tattooing this NBA player. And immigration's going to Google him for sure. And if I don't insert these press articles in the petition, it's going to look like a glaring hole that I did on purpose. So, it's sort of like navigating all of that where it's just like, and he rightfully thought that he didn't do anything wrong. And he didn't really.
Yeah.
So
Well,
tricky.
if it's in a contract that there's no exchange of money, could that be something that you present?
But there was. He was paid when he was abroad for the collaboration. It was just he came here as part of like a PR thing and claims he wasn't paid to tattoo.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
His likeness was used in the collaboration and he was paid for it.
Yeah, that is a gray area then, huh? Yeah. Interesting. And so now I want to talk about what it looks like from the studio side of things, or if you're a petitioner, basically is what you would call a studio that's petitioning for these artists, right? An artist can have multiple petitioners.
They can have one petitioner, but multiple employers.
Gotcha. So like if somebody's coming here to do multiple guest spots, a petitioner like is kind of like a sponsor, would you say?
Yeah. So those terms are used interchangeably. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. But they can have like an itinerary where they're visiting multiple shops, and that kind of helps with the evidence too, right?
Yeah. So O1s cannot be self-petitioned, right? You need a U.S. entity to petition to immigration. And that can be sort of the classic employer-employee relationship. Like if an artist is going to be working exclusively at one studio, it's most likely going to be that studio that acts as the petitioner. But many artists want to have flexibility here. They might want to guest at multiple spots, do like a tour of conventions, etc. And so in those cases, we have a petitioner that's an agent. And that can really be anybody. It could be you personally, it could be the studio, like a business entity, and you're going to be submitting that on behalf of an itinerary of work. And there you might have, 3, 4, a dozen studios on your schedule.
Yeah.
It's a visa for 3 years, so you always submit a 3-year schedule with that. And I think it can be helpful too for immigration because they're saying, well, this artist is going to be busy. This work is not speculative. This is like a bona fide job here in the U.S. So I do think it's helpful. And it's also helpful to artists themselves because it's the closest you'll get to freelancing here. Meaning if you add a gig to that itinerary or if you take one away, you don't need to reapply with immigration. It's still one petition, one filing fee. That's really helpful.
Yeah, totally. And so like how long does the process take?
This is the classic question. And the answer is, it depends. So artists can come to us completely documentarily qualified. Their documents look amazing. They're labeled correctly. They blow through the app and they're out in 3 months. They also have an embassy that doesn't have a wait because that's a big deal too. We can't necessarily anticipate how long it will take to get the visa appointment at the end of the process. So we've certainly had many artists in and out in 3 and 4 months. There are artists who take a year, who maybe don't have a manager or someone to assist them with documents. They're busy. It takes a long time to upload things, or maybe we're waiting on a few more achievements. And those cases can take a lot longer. So I know it really hurts to sort of tell people that. It depends. Like I want to give people a more concrete idea of processing, but that really is what the app does. You will see literally start to finish all the tasks that you have. So it should be very obvious where your case is at and what it needs to get to the end of the road.
Yeah.
And there's people like you were saying in Russia. Russia doesn't have an embassy, and so you need to go to Brazil or something to go to an embassy and get just a visa just to go to Brazil and be able to do
you're constantly sort of navigating geopolitical issues and things like that. The embassy was closed down in Moscow. There's also not one in Venezuela. So after your O1 is even approved by USCIS, you have that amazing hurdle at the end to figure out where you're going to interview. And for our Russian clients,
hurdles and hoops all the way.
Oh, yeah. And we feel like travel agents at the end, where you're literally like booking multiple appointments at different embassies in different countries, seeing how these people can get with their families like as quick as possible.
Man.
And knowing that each embassy has different procedures, sort of different possible outcomes. We keep a database again of all of our embassies, and we send a form to the artists after their interview to sort of gauge how it went, what questions you were asked, what documents they looked at, if any, how did it go. And so every time we get an artist who's saying, I'm going to Santiago, we're going to be thinking about what have other artists said about that recently. You're thinking about all those moving parts at the end of a process too.
And it's I feel like so much of that stuff is stuff that you can only learn by doing. Right?
It really is.
And I mean, it's kind of similar to like paying to take a seminar. It's like when you pay somebody who has the experience, it's like time collapsing, and it can save you a lot of headache if you just have somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing guide you through that process.
100%. Yeah, it's and it's been a long time to get there at this point. Again, we do dozens of these interviews a month. I do a thorough preparation before the interview, and it's hard to tell an artist that you've come all this way, it's been approved by USCIS, and an officer there could still say no, and we were talking about this last night where they can give you what's called a 214B denial, and it feels arbitrary. It feels like an officer most certainly did not read my petition. They wouldn't have time for this. Most people are surprised to hear that those interviews last 3 to 5 minutes. These officers are doing 120 to, interviews just in the morning. And so they are rapid firing through these, and they will have not reviewed your case or the case before it or the case after until you're up at the window. And so you have literally 3 minutes to summarize what we've taken months to prepare. And they're not going to give a shit. They can deny you and you can go on your way. And there's no recourse. There's a doctrine of reviewability that doesn't apply to these decisions. So you can't appeal it. You have to interview again.
That's so insane.
And we've
have
had
to wait, or God forbid, if you flew to Brazil to the Russian
right?
industry.
Right? And then what are we doing there? So, having said that, like I said, we do a lot of these, and most cases will have interviews. Some are waived now since COVID, but most people interview. And in my career, I've probably had 4 people 214B'd. And we're in the process of a few of them right now with Santiago, but you can re-interview. And most of the time, you're going to have a different officer.
Yeah.
And so you'll have that opportunity to re-explain your file and get it approved. But it's a fucking nightmare at the end of it.
Yeah.
The
Totally.
case is done in everybody's eyes, but
Yeah.
hardly.
Totally. And so I have a fairly good idea of the process because our one of our newest artists, Tam, did her visa with Tattoo Visa. She came over from Argentina, and that, I want to say we started that like last May or June.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and she got here to tattoo in February. So that's about how long that one took. She had to check off some of those achievements. She had to do some press, some seminars and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally normal though. Like very few artists come to us like with a resume that's just like untouchable,
Yeah. And so again, I know, but just for everybody else, because you mentioned too, like sometimes like studios or petitioners, like they're hesitant to get involved in this process. So what is the workload or financial responsibility, or like what does a petitioner have to do to have an artist, to sponsor an artist?
Yeah, really not a lot, especially for how apprehensive people are to petition. As far as like money, they don't have to pay legal fees, although some studios do.
Because you always represent the artist, right?
Correct,
Even if
and
the
that's
studio's
regardless
paying
of who
for it.
pays.
Right.
So, and that's very clear in our engagement letter, and same with Eden, I made it clear that, look, we represent Tam, we do not represent the studio. Even if a studio is to pay for that, your responsibility and ethically, your relationship is with the artist. So, they don't have to pay for fees. They don't have to pay filing fees either. There are some other visa types where that's not the case, but the O1 is not one of those. So as far as documents, usually not a whole lot for studios. It's nice to have documents that prove the prestige of a studio. So we obviously included things about Deanna and things about who you guys are, press, other artists who are here. That can speak volumes for extraordinary ability if you're going to a place that
Sure.
is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's not required, but I think it's an obvious inclusion. So press and things like that about the studio, we always include things like your website, printout, and that stuff. We typically don't even include tax returns. A lot of studios are sort of worried about disclosing those, and we typically don't include them. Other than that, you're going to be signing an agreement with the artist, an agent agreement if you're also going to be in that role, and then the petition itself.
Yeah. So I'm because I remember having to provide some of that stuff for you at the very beginning, but I can't imagine I did more than 2 hours worth of work to do all that stuff. I mean, you guys really take care of just about everything. I mean, I think you asked for links to any websites or publications, and I'm sure you would have found that stuff too if I
we do,
didn't also find it.
Yeah.
But even when, we're signing letters and stuff, it's like you've already drafted the letter. I mean, obviously we're reading over it, but you really take all the legwork out of it for us on the studio side of things.
Well, you'd have to, because like when you're getting recommendations from studios, you guys are busy.
Well,
And also what is in the letter. A lot of people are like, well, I have a recommendation from this artist or maybe the celebrity who's a client. And those are really not helpful for us. So a lot of times we say, thank you, I'll use this moving forward, but I can't submit this to immigration. It doesn't have anywhere near the detail that these letters need to include, especially about like why an achievement is important. It's not good enough to say an artist is talented or they have good work ethic or things that we typically see in these letters. It really needs to say this person has this achievement, this is important, and I know because X, Y, and Z.
Totally.
So those are things that we are very accustomed in drafting, and it's much quicker for us to do that and then to get studios and other artists to review and sign.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a different setup here because I'm one of the owners and I don't have to tattoo all day, but most of the time, the owner of the studio is a tattoo artist. So if you're having to do this immigration stuff, regardless of how much you guys take care of, I can definitely see how it would be kind of daunting and a little bit stressful to get involved with something like that. But I think it's important to note that y'all really do take care of almost everything.
We try, we work a lot with like managers and a lot of spouses of artists. We love when we have a real involved spouse who can facilitate documents and stuff like that. And that's just part of the business. You're working with a lot of different people, and the artists who have help and a really active studio can make this a huge relief. Makes things process quicker. So it's really great when we have a studio like your guys's who is involved, who is taking the time.
Yeah, totally. Well, it was a very easy process on our side of things. I know Tam had to do a ton of work, but y'all were so helpful and changed your life. And you do that every day. Like,
yeah,
it's insane.
It's amazing, and it's a blessing to do this and an honor, truly. But it's also part of the burden, when your work has an impact on someone else's career or life, it can make it hard to sleep at night, and we do this dozens of times over a month, and it's more than just transactional. It really feels like, well, in the end, these people are like family to us. Artists really become a part of just the Tattoo Visa family. And so imagine you're doing something that implicates like a brother or sister's life. It's really, really heavy burden.
And even though you've never had a denial, I mean, you run.
God, we've certainly had RFEs. We do get those time to time, and they're devastating. When it's like, oh, fuck, this person's so qualified. What the fuck?
But even if it's like they're gonna get the visa eventually, like sometimes that timeline gets pushed out and it's not really in your control, and that's got to be.
Yeah, you lose sleep over that. You lose sleep, literally. You lose sleep over it. And, we want this so bad for our clients. It's hard. That's a heavy burden.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love seeing how much you truly, truly care about your clients.
It sounds cliche too, but, I've officiated weddings for clients before. Like artists our clients have come to our weddings. Like they really do become like family. And it's been an unexpected blessing in all of this. It really expands your your world. It's been a really cool part that I didn't anticipate with Tattoo Visa. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I feel a similar way about our artists too. I mean, it's less, there's less volume than the clients you have, but when you, especially when you're running your own business and having this huge effect on people's lives, you get really, really close to people and you get really, really invested in what they're doing.
And how amazing is it that it's people from all over the world, like
That's so cool.
here, yes, I'm in New York City. There's a huge immigrant population, but I have literally best friends from all parts of the world, all different economic backgrounds, all, unified under one sort of passion in art. It's so fucking cool. Like had you told me 10 years ago that I'd be doing this, I wouldn't have even believed it.
Yeah.
It's really been magical.
Yeah.
I want to take a second to talk about Allegory ink. I've been using Allegory black ink for some time now, and it's been the best black ink I've ever used. It's really consistent, really black, and I haven't used anything else since. They also have Ultra Black if you need that extra punch. Use the code EDEN20 for 20% off your order. If you're one of the countless artists that has ditched that second skin because of all the crazy reactions you're getting, I think it's time to look into SynSkin. It absolutely crushes anything else on the market right now. It's flexible, it's hypoallergenic, and it just sticks really well. You'll also notice that it irritates skin much less. At this point, I won't use anything else. Try it out and go to centerstattoosupply.com and get 10% off your order when you use the discount code Deanna10.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you for everything.
Yeah. I feel like that's a pretty good spot to end right there. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming down. And I feel like we just met pretty recently, in person, but we've been working on stuff together for a long time. And even, a few years ago when I called you, you probably don't even remember, but you've always been so nice, so helpful, so forthcoming with information. And I mean, what you're doing for this industry is just amazing. It's incredible. And the difference you make in people's lives on a daily basis, it's astounding. So
thanks. It really is an
congratulations on
honor.
that.
Yeah.
And how can people get in contact with you and your company and start this process?
Yeah, so we're, everywhere at Tattoo Visa, tattoovisa.com. Our Get Started is a tab right on our homepage. We're available on Instagram, Tattoo Visa, and our app is available anywhere you can download apps.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.